Derech Hashem, Way of God, Section 1, Chapter 4, Paragraph 1. The name of this chapter, this in the Rabbi Kaplan Feldheim version, this is on page 60. The name of this chapter is, he says, Human Responsibility. The Hebrew name of the chapter is regarding the situation of the person in this world and the paths before him, going into details. So the first thing that Rabbi Luzzatto says is that when we're trying to understand the situation that the person is in, so then there are two aspects that we need to focus on. There's the person themselves, his makeup, his composition, and then there's also the place and the nature of the place in which he finds himself. So regarding the man and his composition, the human being and his composition, so we already said that human being is made up of two opposites. So now we'll go into more details in understanding that. There's the body and the soul, these two opposites. So the nature of, in the situation that we're in right now, so the body is primary in its control. When the soul enters the body, or when the person comes into this world, so then there is virtually no control that the soul exerts on the body. But as the person develops, so then it's possible for the soul to get more of a grasp, more control over the body, to a point where the soul is able to direct the body to follow in the paths of chachma, of an understanding of the true nature of reality. So breaking this down further, you got to remember that the nature of physicality is a reality that it occludes, it blocks, it keeps a person distant from being close to God. And obviously that doesn't mean in a physical, regarding physical proximity, closeness to God, but a matter of awareness to God. When we are focused on the physical, so then we relate to the physical as being reality, and that reality doesn't represent anything about God necessarily. So we can be very removed, very divorced from closeness, from connection to the Almighty in this state. So the neshama itself, even though it itself is pure and holy, but nevertheless, when it comes into the body, so then, and it becomes entangled with the body, so then it is forced to be in a situation in which it is in a state which is very much the opposite of what it's about, and it's not able to get out of the control that it is under when put into the body, unless it exerts a significant amount of effort and energy and strength. It has to be more strength than the strength that is controlling it. So says the Ramchal, the Rabbi Luzzatto, that being that the body and the soul are intended to be together forever, meaning that this phase of death is actually a temporary phase. We don't necessarily think about that. Usually we think of, life as being temporary. It's true that this phase of life is temporary, but the state of body and soul being together is really intended to be eternal. And the separation of the two is really temporary. So then it's necessary that the soul put in effort in order to weaken the power of chomrius, of physicality, to a point where the body, it reaches a state where it is no longer dark. And then then the soul is able, and the soul and the body together are able to connect to the Creator. So while the entire time that a person is in this world, then they're in a situation where they are subject to this physicality, and is very strong within the person, and that makes them be very distant from that which they're fit to be, which is to be connecting to the Almighty. So for this, a person has to put in a tremendous amount of effort in order to strengthen their neshama against the physicality, and to benefit it their situation to lift themselves up to a point where they're supposed to be. So now we're ready to talk about the situation, the place where a person finds himself. The place that a person is situated, regarding this world, is also entrenched in physicality. The place itself is physical. Every being with which the person interacts is physical, and it's necessary for the person to involve themselves in physical activities. And that's because of the way that the person is made up. They need to eat, they need to drink, and therefore they need to come up with to amass sufficient funds to be able to supply their physical requirements, their physical needs. So, and this demands that the person be involved in the physical world. So, regarding the world, regarding their involvement, regarding the person's body themselves, then they are entrenched in physicality, and they're immersed in its darkness. And it requires a tremendous amount of effort in order to lift up above this. But that's necessary, right? That's something that the physicality that the person is immersed in mandates. So we continue on page 64 with Os Dalid, with paragraph 4. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged it so that even though a person is stuck in the mud, so to speak, of all of this, surrounded by all this physicality, then nevertheless it's possible for them to rise up above it, and that is specifically not only even though they're stuck in the physicality, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged that precisely through their involvement in the physical, it's possible for them to rise up and lift themselves up, and that is specifically through physical acts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it possible. And through that, so then, instead of being lowered down by the necessity of their being involved in the physical, on the contrary, then the very fact that those activities which will generate, which will lift them up, are being that they're physical, so then the person themselves, not only are they lifted up, but they end up lifting up the physical themselves, itself, because of the fact that the physical actions were part of were the way through which this person was able to rise up above the being stuck in the physical. And the way Hashem did that was that He arranged the physical reality in such a way so that by performing specific actions with specific intentions, then that would incorporate into the person the aspects of shleimus, wholeness, completeness that the person needs. So these physical acts are programmed in such a way so that they will accomplish that. And the way Hashem did that was that Hashem took a look at all of the deficiencies that are embedded within the human situation and all of the aspects of shleimus, of completeness, of wholeness that are necessary for the person to get to be fit to connect to the Almighty in the way that Hashem that the Almighty wants him to connect. And Hashem programmed all of those aspects into the creation, all of everything that's going to be necessary for a person to overcome those deficiencies and incorporate all of that shleimus into the physical reality in such a way so that very specific physical activities will incorporate into the person these aspects of shleimus, these aspects of completeness and wholeness, and these very specific acts, and refraining from certain specific acts is going to protect the person from descending further, descending lower. So, were it not for that decree that a person has to go through the process of death, so then these acts are really programmed in such a way so that they should produce this transformation process, this uplifting process of the physical immediately. However, because of the fact that we have to go through the process of death first, so then the neshama, the soul, is becoming charged with that capacity to be able to accomplish what it can and should accomplish, which is the transformation of the physical. But the actualization of that will only be when the soul returns once again to the body after the temporary separation of death.